Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. Today, senators are moving forward on a bill meant to lower costs and boost American manufacturing of semiconductor chips. This has had support from both Republicans and Democrats. NTD's Melina Wisecup brings us more.
On Capitol Hill today, senators kicked off their procedural votes for passing the CHIPS Act. It's their first steps towards passing a bill that would grant $52 billion to U.S. chip manufacturers along with tax credits. This is in response to the global chip shortage that has contributed to inflation, particularly on products like smartphones, refrigerators, and cars. The White House has been urging Congress to pass this bill for months now, as it's one of their solutions to fighting inflation. Here's what Senate Democrats told reporters today about this bill.
I urge my colleagues, if you want to fight inflation, if you want to create more good-paying jobs here at home, bring American jobs home, if you want to keep America strong and competitive in the 21st century, support the CHIPS Act today.
This is a vote for the future. I want the Democrats to be on the right side of history, and I pray that enough Republicans will join us that we can see the science section of this bill added.
Senate Leader Chuck Schumer wants to add to this bill investments in U.S. scientific development and technology. But he says if he cannot get enough votes to add that piece into the bill, they will just move forward with the smaller, scaled-back version, including the CHIPS Act. Now, this CHIPS Act does look like it will move smoothly through the Senate. We've heard from Republicans over the past couple of months that they have support for this. Most recently, Senator John Cornyn says that we need to invest more in U.S. manufacturing here, saying that it, quote, does nothing to protect the United States economy or national security to have another manufacturing facility located somewhere else around the world. Now, this bill is just a piece of a larger bill that was originally aimed at stepping up our competition with China. That larger China competition bill has been stalled in Congress for months because the House and Senate are unable to come to agreements in key areas, such as how far to go when cracking down on Chinese espionage. So while the two chambers are still hashing out the details for that larger China competition bill, they've decided to move forward with this more scaled-back version, that is the CHIPS Act. The procedural votes have started today, and we can expect to see final passage by later this week or next. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
We recently covered the story about Chinese companies purchasing American farmland. Right now, the total amount of farmland owned by Chinese companies is not substantial on paper. However, Congressman Dan Newhouse says the trend is alarming. He shared his concerns with us and also the pushback he's been facing on the issue. Congressman Dan Newhouse, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be with you. Yes, thank you.
Congressman, you've been one of the leading voices when it comes to China, specifically Chinese entities purchasing U.S. agricultural land. Tell us why that is and what has you concerned.
We've been seeing an increase in interest and purchase of agricultural assets in our country, in the United States, by Chinese firms, increased by a factor of 10 over, say, the last decade. Frankly, overall, the number of acres owned, American farmland acres, is not huge. The trend is concerning. And I've been watching what's happening around the world as China looks to expand its sphere of influence and control more and more resources and pieces of infrastructure. I took a trip several years ago to Central and South America and saw firsthand some of the things that they've done down there, and have heard stories about some of the activities they're involved with in other continents like Africa, and started to look around and see, those things are happening here in the United States as well. And a lot of people aren't paying attention to the fact that China is becoming a much bigger player in the agricultural industry in the United States.
Can you tell us about that amendment that you mentioned?
Absolutely. Actually, this has been going on now for 2 appropriation seasons. It's just an effort to preclude China from purchasing agricultural assets. And so, as you can imagine, there was some pushback. We're in a period of time where many people raised a concern that this would actually target Chinese people in the United States. And that was not our intention, so we made some adjustments to that. And then other people were concerned that why are you targeting just one country? China's the only one that's doing this. That we look at other countries that are not allies, such as Russia, North Korea, Iran. They're not engaged nearly to the extent, and can't. In the cases of several of those countries, don't have the financial wherewithal to do what China is doing. But China is very engaged.
And I mean, it's a whole different discussion to talk about how China uses disinformation campaigns to manipulate the conversation they could be the ones behind that narrative saying that it targets Chinese people.
Well, you probably know a little bit more about that than I do. But you're absolutely right. I think that some of the resistance and some of the pushback that we felt over the last year could very well have originated from them, because they have a lot on the line, a lot invested in our country, and they want to protect that. And the amendment passed unanimously a year ago through the Appropriations Committee. I was very happy about that. But then through the bringing the bill to the Rules Committee and eventually to the floor, it went through a couple of more iterations. It added those other countries, put in some language so that it wouldn't be seen as just targeting Chinese individuals. And so we tried to be more specific about the intention. And then by the time it got through the conference process between the Senate and the House, essentially it was narrowed down to just asking the Department of Agriculture for a report on how much China has purchased over the last several years. So, and frankly, I'm not even sure we've gotten that report yet from the USDA. So the effort was redoubled to do this again with another attempt in language at the appropriations level in the committee, and then also standalone legislation so that we could address this head on.
So we were having a chat earlier about China owning or having 50% of the world's grain supply. There's talk of food shortages. We're seeing the inflation through various things that we purchase in the supermarket. Can you tell us, are there regulatory barriers that can be broken down to help relieve some of this pain for farmers?
One thing that many people have heard of is the Waters of the United States regulations. The Waters of the United States that's become known as WOTUS, which is, in my estimation, truly the most egregious regulatory overreach by the federal government ever. This will dictate how every farmer in the country uses their land. They have to get a permit through the federal government, and this isn't just wild talk to potentially change crops, to plow in the spring, depending on what water bodies are in the neighboring area or on their land that would impact what's seen as water pollution. States are already doing a lot of this kind of stuff. We had regulations that were put in place under the last administration. This administration wants to go back to the Obama era, which was very, very egregious as far as the restrictions that it put on farmers and that dictated to them how they actually ran their farms. So we want to put a hold on that. There's other things that are happening in the Environmental Protection Agency.
Congressman Dan Newhouse, thank you.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is reportedly reviving plans to visit Taiwan. That's after canceling a trip in April. But it comes amid a particularly sensitive time and as Beijing lashes out at the U.S.
Nancy Pelosi is reportedly packing her bags for Taiwan. That's according to a Tuesday Financial Times report that cites 6 people familiar with the trip they say is slated for August. And if that actually happens, the House Speaker will be the highest-ranking American lawmaker to visit the island in decades.
The demonstration of support for Taiwan against China's bullying, that's the critical issue.
The visit comes at a delicate timing, as the Chinese military, which has long been suspected of planning an invasion to the democratically ruled island, is commemorating its founding anniversary in August. It also comes as Xi Jinping is seeking to extend his reign in the Communist Party's Congress later this year. And Beijing is already lashing out. Its foreign ministry warned on Tuesday that Beijing's relations with Washington will be severely damaged if Pelosi visits Taiwan to show support. But Seth Cropsey, president of the Yorktown Institute, tells NTD that he doesn't think the regime would actually do anything drastic that would lead to escalation.
Xi Jinping and the Communist Party are distinguished for several things. Bullying is one of them, and making a lot of fuss is another.
The Financial Times also noted that some in the White House had expressed concerns about the trip. But Joseph Bosco with the Global Taiwan Institute tells us that he hopes Biden will make clear the United States' commitment to defend Taiwan.
There are people who are nervous about doing anything that makes Beijing upset, but it's time we got over that and started just doing things that make sense from a U.S. policy standpoint.
Meanwhile, Biden and Xi are slated to hold an online meeting in the coming weeks in which Taiwan could be a topic of discussion.
The average price of gasoline in the United States fell for the fifth consecutive week, tumbling by almost 16 cents to $4.51 per gallon on Monday. This is according to GasBuddy.com. The White House is taking credit. Speaking at a press briefing earlier today, White House economic advisor Jake Bernstein said that President Biden's handling of the war in Ukraine has helped.
While there's a lot that goes into setting the global oil and gas price, the historic actions taken by President Biden to address the impact of Putin's invasion of Ukraine have helped and continue to help to increase the global supply of oil and therefore are in the mix of factors driving down the price.
Analysts say that the downward price trend is expected for at least another week and that gas prices will fall below $4 per gallon. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.